Android Studio, what is it and what do we use it for? Let's take a look at the overall composition of Android platform. So Android platform consists of Android operating system, Android software development kit, Android Studio, the topic of this video, compatibility definition document and compatibility test suite, and some other components. So at a very high level, Android Studio is just a part of Android platform. At this point, I do want to acknowledge the fact that many developers will say that Android Studio is not an integral part of Android platform because it's a standalone tool and also an optional tool. Android Studio is crucially important, it's developed by Google, it's used by millions of developers worldwide, and it's integrated with everything Android. And that's why I consider it to be a part of Android platform, but I would not argue with anyone who would say otherwise, because it's not really important. What's important is that Android Studio is the core part of being an Android developer. So Android Studio is the official IDE, integrated development environment for developing Android applications, and it's developed by Google. However, Google haven't built Android Studio from scratch. Instead, they took the existing IDE called IntelliJ IDEA from JetBrains and built Android Studio on top of it. What it means, practically speaking, is that Google pays a lot of money to JetBrains in order to use their IntelliJ IDEA as a platform, as a basis of Android Studio. And we can get all the crazy features of Android Studio for free, because if you want to use IntelliJ IDEA, some features you get for free, but for the advanced features, you need to pay money. With Android Studio, everything is free and you can use all the features because Google pays for this piece of software for all of us. How cool is that? At this point, I would like to take a moment to explain what it means to be an integrated development environment, IDE. Why do we need such a long and bombastic name for these tools? Let's see. I have a project and I know that this project contains a class called main activity. So I can find the corresponding file, name main activity.kt, and then use any text editor, let's say Emacs in my case, to open this file. And now I can edit it. I can see the source code, I can read it, and I can edit and save it if I'd like to. Everything will work, but that's just the basic experience of navigating the source code, editing it, and saving. Let's see what Android Studio adds on top of that. I have the same project open in Android Studio, and just like with my text editor, I can open main activity, I can read its code, and I can modify it if I'd like to. But Android Studio, being an integrated development environment, allows me to do much more than that. For example, I can click on this Screens Navigator class and jump straight to its source code. So I don't need to look for its definition. Android Studio will find it for me. In addition, I can at a glance see the structure of my project, where all the files located, and I can find, for example, Dialogues Navigator. Open this, please, yes. And with a single click, I can find where this class resides in my project. That's really cool. In addition to working with the source code, changing it and jumping around, Android Studio also integrates all the build tools required to build Android applications. So for example, I can choose the target of my application, Pixel 6 API 33, that's my emulator, and I can build and deploy the application right on this emulator inside Android Studio. And the emulator itself is shown inside Android Studio, so I can work with this application right inside this IDE, integrated development environment. And there's so much more that you can do inside Android Studio. There are so many more features that it integrates into itself that you can actually use right inside this piece of software without going anywhere else. It will take several hours to just cover all of them and show you how to use them. I won't do that, but I do want to show you one very important comment, in my opinion, the most important comment inside Android Studio. On Windows, this command is bound by default to the combination of keys Shift, Control, and A. And this command is find action. So basically, it allows you to find any action inside Android Studio just by searching for its name. It's not always possible to remember all the shortcuts, and it's not even always possible to remember all the commands that you have inside Android Studio because there are so many of them. But this find action allows you, for example, to just input some search term, and it will show you all the commands that Android Studio has related to this search term. So I wrote build, and Android Studio handily shows me all the stuff related to build that I can do. Or for example, I can once again press on Control Shift A, Command Shift A on Macs, and for example, search for SDK Manager. SDK Manager is a feature inside Android Studio that allows me to see and modify the settings of Android SDK Software Development Kit installed on my computer. So here I can see where the Android SDK is actually installed, and here at a glance I can see which platform versions are installed inside my Android SDK. And you can see that basically I installed the latest platform versions, but I can go here and check, for example, some of the older versions and click on apply, and this will install that. In addition, I can go to SDK tools and again at a glance see which SDK tools are installed. For example, CMake, which can be used to build C and C++ code and integrate it into Android applications. So all of that is integrated inside Android Studio, and you don't need to go anywhere else in order to find all these features. Let's list some of the actions that you can perform right inside Android Studio. First of all, you can read, write, and refactor your code. These are the basic functions, right? You can navigate the codebase, jump around however you want. You can build APKs, AARs, AABs, deploy to device or emulator. You have the integrated SDK manager, which makes your life so much easier. You can run tests and get test reports right inside Android Studio, including coverage reports, debug and profile your applications, use version control systems, which you should use Git probably, and so much more. Android Studio is exceptionally complex piece of software with lots and lots of features. And even after being an Android developer for more than 8 years today, I'm still not convinced that I know even half of all the features packed into this amazing IDE. So Android Studio is pretty much the only piece of software you need to interact with to create Android applications. And this makes your life as an Android developer so much simpler in most cases. You have just Android Studio, you install it, you configure it, and then you can start developing your applications, and you don't need anything else. You have everything right inside this piece of software. That's why I find it amazing. And I find it especially amazing that we don't need to pay for this IDE. Google took care of that for us.